Hey guys, it's Stefan, and today I'm going to be reading the 9th chapter of Eddie and the Lizard Man. In the last chapter, Eddie became more convinced than ever that his boss, Kevin Kennedy, is in fact a lizard man. Could Eddie actually be right? Well, let's keep reading to find out. Chapter 9. The Burgundy Suitcases. It was now evening as Eddie slowly crept around the outside of Kennedy Antiques. He was armed with a 35mm film camera hanging around his neck and a conviction that he would finally prove his theory to be right. He headed toward the front of the store, the part that faced Main Street. By this time, the sun had set, but the parking lot was lit by street lights, so Eddie still had to do his best to stay in the shadows if he wanted to remain unseen. So far, he had succeeded. As he approached the front corner of the store, he glanced down at his watch. The time read 6:30 p.m. Eddie hoped Kevin hadn't already left the store. If he had, Eddie wasn't sure when he would get another chance to prove that Kevin was indeed a reptilian. Arriving at the corner, Eddie poked his head around the edge of the brick wall where he could see the front of Kennedy Antiques. The store's interior lights had been turned out. Oh great, I missed him! But then something caught his eye. The sign hanging in the door read open, meaning that either Kevin had forgotten to flip the sign to closed, or he had just turned out the lights and hadn't left yet. Eddie moved deeper into the shadows and decided to wait a few minutes to see if Kevin would emerge. It couldn't have been more than 15 seconds that passed when Eddie began to lose hope. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, 15 seconds? He's losing hope after 15 seconds? What a lightweight! And if this were any other situation, you would be absolutely correct. However, in the event where you find yourself spying on your boss because you believe him to be a lizard man with questionable motives, 15 seconds can seem like an hour or maybe even an hour and a half. And that's exactly how these 15 seconds felt to Eddie. So you see, in this situation, it wasn't so strange that Eddie was beginning to lose hope. But thankfully he didn't, because at exactly 16 seconds, his patience paid off. Eddie saw something move inside the store. It was Kevin, approaching the front door and flipping the open sign to closed. He sighed with relief as his boss opened the door and stepped onto the sidewalk. Kevin carried 2 large burgundy suitcases. He set them down on the sidewalk and turned to lock the door to Kennedy Antiques, but something seemed odd to Eddie. It wasn't that Kevin set the suitcases down on the sidewalk that seemed odd. It was how he set them down. Anyone seeing what Eddie was seeing would have agreed. The suitcases were handled so gingerly that one might think he was protecting something very important. Eddie anxiously pulled the camera up to his face and snapped a few pictures of Kevin and the mysterious suitcases. What do you have in those creepy-looking suitcases? And why are you being so careful with them? As those questions and others like them were bouncing around Eddie's head, Kevin picked up the suitcases and looked up and down the street to see if anyone was watching him. Eddie ducked back behind the corner, hoping he hadn't been seen. He gave it a few seconds before taking a peek. As he did, Kevin disappeared down the alley on the other end of the building. Not wanting to lose him, Eddie carefully pursued Kevin from a distance. After following Kevin down 3 alleys and 2 side streets, Eddie realized they were now on the backside of Morgan Street, about 3/4 mile away from the antique store. Eddie thought to himself, "What on earth are you up to?" All right, so one of my favorite things about Eddie is how observant he is. He picks up on very little things like how Kevin was handling or setting down the suitcases. Not everybody picks up on things like that, but that's what makes Eddie such a good detective. He notices the small things. So, what do you think Kevin had in those suitcases? Let me know in the comments below. Also, remember that you can get your own copy of Eddie and the Lizard Man by clicking the links in the description box below. And if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe, and join me next time as I continue our reading of Eddie and the Lizard Man in Chapter 10, Wet Willies. Stay curious.